Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Henning. I'm the president and CEO for the Henry County Chamber of Commerce, and it is my pleasure to welcome everyone to the call today. And thank you for your time. We still have a few more people popping in, and so we had more than 100 people registered, and we're not close to that on the Zoom yet. So as I wait for them to come into the room, I'm just going to do a bit of housekeeping for all of us that are here. I want to thank you. I want to thank Shannon and David for joining me today. In order to facilitate a little bit easier on the Q&A, we are going to limit the questions to those that are on Facebook Live. If you're watching us on Facebook Live, feel free to put your questions in there, or on the Q&A feature within Zoom if you are in the room with us. We are going to use those two platforms as our question and answer. Feel free to post them. If we're not able to answer them in the time allotted, we will follow up and we will keep the conversation going through the Facebook and that. Of course, if you have questions that you think of after the fact, feel free to reach out to me at the chamber or to Shannon and David at the county, and I'm sure that they'll have the information on who to contact in that regarding the grant as we come forward. So again, I want to thank Shannon and David for joining us today from the county. A few weeks ago, we had an initial discussion about the grant opportunity that they had available to small business, and I worked with them in order to help figure out how we got that out, and I promised them that we would do everything in our power to get this out to those eligible small businesses in the county to make sure that we were doing everything we could collaboratively to help keep small business going and keep Henry County strong. And so they're here today. They're going to talk about the grant a bit for us, and then let us know when that application is live. But right now we'll go over to Shannon and David. Again, thank you for joining us, and I'm going to let you take it away.
Good afternoon, Joe, and thank you. Thank you for having us today. And we thank you for this opportunity and your assisting us through this process.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Joe.
Good afternoon.
To the chamber and everyone joining. Joe, you told us we were just going to be talking to chamber members.
I know this is completely open to the public.
Like a tremendous amount of.
We got the whole Henry County population that's watching.
Right,
us
seems like you gave us the tremendous business community at large and everything. So we're certainly glad to have this opportunity. Thank
you. I know you've got a slide deck available in that. Should we start in with that and kind of go through the details, and then we can take some questions in that from those that are joining us? Is that okay?
Please.
Okay. Please.
All right, perfect.
So, Joe, if you don't mind, as Gary helps us go through these slides, basically, Shannon is going to help talk about the details of the grant itself. I'm going to do a broad overview of how we got to this point, and then we'll talk a little bit about who qualifies, which Shannon is going to address, how to apply, and then we'll come back to me in terms of the review process altogether. We tried to keep the presentation itself very brief so that we can get to the majority of the questions that I'm sure your community has out there for us.
That sounds great. Nope, that sounds great. Thank you.
So we'll start with the CARES Act Treasury guidelines. And so basically, the Treasury Department, Congress passed the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. That's where we get CARES from, to provide vital resources to help us combat the impact that COVID-19 is not only having on our businesses, but also on our community. The Treasury Department provided the state of Georgia $4.1 billion, and 45% of that amount could be allocated to local governments, which our Governor Kemp so graciously did provide to us. As many people remember, the larger counties, those that had 500,000 citizens or more, they received their funding first. But our governor, in passing that down now through us, made it available to some of the smaller counties and cities. And so phase one, we were able to receive a 30% advance deposit on a total amount, it's like about $8.5 million in total that we're receiving. And we received an advance of 30%, and 70% of that is subsequent disbursements, and it has to be for reimbursable expenditures. That's reimbursable expenditures. And what we wanted to do with that was to address the business community as well as our help and assist nonprofits, those that could address those in greatest need. Shannon?
Thank you, David. To follow up on what David was describing on how we will be utilizing those funds, today we will be discussing specifically the opportunity for small businesses. For this program, we are defining small businesses as those with 20 or fewer employees, and that does include the owner-operator. This program is intended for private, for-profit businesses and only those located in Henry County. They are nonprofits, franchises, or chain organizations are not eligible for these assistance at this time. Funding assistance will be available up to $10,000 per applicant. Applicants must be registered with the Secretary of State Department, as well as the Henry County Business Occupational Tax License and or the Occupational Tax License Office in one of the 4 municipalities in Henry, to include Hampton, Locust Grove, McDonough, or Stockbridge. Documentation of such registration must be included with the application. Specifically, small businesses, in order to be eligible, they must have their primary office physically located in Henry County. They must be registered again with the State Department, the Secretary of State, and they must provide documentation of their local occupational tax registration. Included with our small businesses, we also wish to make these funds available to independent contractors and individuals who are self-employed. Those applicants, must be a resident operating a business in Henry County. They must be a resident of Henry County operating a business within Henry County. To apply, their application must include their registration with the occupational tax license, being in Henry County or one of the 4 cities. Going on to the next slide, please. We've identified some eligible and ineligible uses, which are on the slide you see. To briefly go over those, funding shall be issued as a one-time grant to small local businesses or independent contractors, self-employed individuals, to assist with their short-term financial needs. Funds must be used for eligible, unbudgeted business expenses that are determined reasonable, not excessive, and necessary for the stabilization of that business that has been impacted by COVID-19. Some eligible uses include employee wages and benefits, to include fringe benefits associated with employment, such as health insurance. Accounts payable, fixed costs, inventory, rent, and utilities are also eligible expenses. Working capital, marketing, planning, and feasibility studies, as well as technical training and assistance, machinery or equipment are also eligible expenses. Ineligible expenses would be the relocating of a business. That is relocating of a business from Henry County to Henry County or even within Henry County. Relocating a business would not be an eligible expense. Renovations, paying off existing debt, reimbursement of costs incurred prior to March 1st, 2020 are also ineligible expenses. Starting a new business or lost revenue are also ineligible expenses. Only applicants who can demonstrate that private funding is either not feasible or not available, such as through a denial letter, would be eligible for assistance under this program. Applicants must be able to demonstrate that assistance through the Paycheck Protection Program, commonly known as PPP, is either not feasible or not available, also through a denial letter, to be considered eligible. As these are federal funds, we also would like to state that this process is conditional to new information that may come available from the U.S. or the State Department of Treasury.
Now, Shannon, we would be remiss, right, if we didn't give thanks to our Board of Commissioners, the Chair, Madam Vice Chair, I always like to say, and the commissioners in the community for making that possible. Is that correct?
Most definitely.
Because they were very instrumental in assisting us in pulling all of this information together and refining it so that we could help you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So what I'd like to do is basically go over our review process and our ongoing responsibility, because this actually are federal funds that we're utilizing. So we want to ensure that there is no duplication of funding. And Shannon's already touched on this by talking about the Paycheck Protection Program. So if you've received funding from Paycheck Protection Program, you will be ineligible. And that's why we're requesting certain types of documentation that would indicate such support. How is this going to happen? Well, we put out a link on our website, I believe. Is that up and ready yet?
No, sir, not just yet, but we do expect that link to be available on the county's website prior to the close of business today.
So we do have a staff here at Henry County that's going to be the initial reviewers of those applications that come through. They're going to go through those, determine levels of eligibility to see if they meet certain criteria, and then we're going to present those recommendations to a CARES Act review committee. Any idea who's on this CARES Act review committee, Shannon?
Yes, sir. The Board of Commissioners, each of the members of that board will be appointing a member to the review committee. Those specific names have not all been released to me at this time, but the Board of Commissioners will be appointing those members.
And once we receive the recommendations from that CARES Act review committee, those recommendations are going to be presented to the Board of Commissioners. And so what we are requesting and what we certainly need is that these businesses that are applying for these loans, they're going to have proper internal controls in place so that they can maintain appropriate audit trails. Because these are federal dollars, we are subject to audit, including the fiscal records, whatever supporting documentation is necessary so that we can provide proper accountability for the expenditures of these funds over the next 7 years. And in that process, we have to conduct our due diligence to make certain that these expenses are in fact eligible.
David, if I can, it's important for us to also make known, with these being federal funds, there are conflicts of interest. As a result, members of the Henry County Board of Commissioners and no member of the Henry County Board of Commissioners or appointed official to Henry County who exercises or has exercised any function or responsibility with respects to the CARES funding, David, that includes you and I,
Yes,
would be eligible for this funding assistance. Also, anyone in a position to participate in the decision-making on how these funds are distributed or to be utilized would not be eligible. These funds are strictly to be awarded to small businesses functioning here in Henry County. Applicants and those awarded funding must maintain a written code or standard of conduct that shall govern the performance of its officers, employees, or agents engaged in any award or administration of those funds to ensure no conflict of interest. I also want to make known religious organizations who consider applying for any funding cannot utilize any funding to carry out any inherent religious activities. This is to avoid any conflict of interest. As a reminder, these are federal dollars.
Now, Joe, one of the things we haven't touched on is really the allocation and the allocation percentages. And the intent here is to really provide about 30% of our total allocation for the small business community. And that comes to about $2.5 million. Is that correct, Shannon?
Yes, sir.
And then for nonprofits, which is not the purpose of the discussion here, we also plan on providing $2.5 million.
That's great. That's great. So there's one question that came up, and it's a great question, because I know as we talked through some of the application process and that, and I realize that the application is not live yet. So this is conditional until it goes live. There might be a few changes here and there. But what is that process for application? I assume there's going to be, you fill in name, contact information, employer ID number. This one is specific to independent contractors, but in general, what are some of the items that they might need to pull? Maybe they can start pulling them now in preparation for filling out the application.
So in addition to those state license and registration, applicants will also have to provide bank statements and other financial forms.
That's correct. So if they have a financial statement, it can either be a compilation or a review. It doesn't have to be an audit. If they can provide those financial statements as well, along with their bank statements, it certainly would be helpful. We're also looking to make certain that they have an employee identification number. Joe, you talked about the independent contractors. Sometimes you haven't applied for an employee identification number. You are utilizing your social security number in that regard, and that's also acceptable.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. And I appreciate the information through here for the small business, but I know that we do have a fair amount of not-for-profits that have joined us this morning. And so I don't mean to put you on the spot, but will that be the same application that'll launch today, or will that be a little bit of a different process, do you see?
So we do anticipate the application for nonprofits launching today. It will be a separate application. The process will be very similar. However, we will be asking additional questions. For nonprofits, we're looking to provide assistance to them that they may provide that assistance and distribute those funds throughout the community to assist our residents. We will be looking for those nonprofits to provide information on the services that they will be able to offer residents, whether it be rental or mortgage assistance, utility assistance, or food banks for the purchase and delivery of foods. They will have to provide descriptions of those services. And I would even say their mission statements and a brief history of how they provide their services.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, and I believe this goes back to on or about March 1st. I don't want to be, I might be close on that date. So it can be reimbursable expenses for things that they might have had to put into place in order to reopen. Is that correct? Okay. Two questions within that.
That is correct, Joe.
Okay.
That is correct. It's from March 1st through December 31st.
Okay.
We're looking for those expenses have to be already spent, and this is for reimbursement.
Okay. So if we had a lot, I know seeing on social media and that over the past several months that we had a lot of not-for-profits that were reaching out to the community to provide food, housing, different things like that for some that were dislocated due to the economy and that. So can those not-for-profits then that might have had expenses there for whether it was food distribution or things like that, can they apply for this grant as a reimbursable expense to provide services? Okay. All right.
Yes,
now,
sir. They will be able to apply for the nonprofit assistance application.
Wonderful, wonderful. We'll definitely want to help you get that word out because I know that there's so many out there that have been providing these services to the community, and we want to make sure that if there is money available to them, that they're aware of it and hopefully trying to get that. With that same thought in mind, we had a lot of our businesses, we have great businesses in Henry County, very innovative. They created new ways of getting their product, their services out to the community to help keep them going. I know some created walk-up windows that they could distribute food or services or whatever it was that they were doing. We did a lot of curbside. There was maybe some software, website redesign, things like that they had to do that took them from February 29th of this year into the March, where we all started seeing how creative we could all be to keep our doors open. So if they had some renovations like that, would that be something that would be reimbursable?
I don't believe renovations would be reimbursable at this point. The goal right here is really for the payroll type expenses. Okay. If you had to secure or procure PPE, that personal protective equipment, sanitizing the business and probably retrofitting yourself, because some businesses went from sit down to take out. Those would be eligible type expenditures.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Thank you for that clarification. I'm sorry, there was one that popped through here. Oh, how many days are left to apply and allocate? I will leave that to you because that's always, that might have changed a bit. I think I have my answer, but I'm going to turn that back to you. And since the applications haven't opened, I think it's a cart horse thing. But again, for those that are watching, we're anticipating by the end of the day today, at least the small business grant application will be live. We think maybe the not-for-profit, it'll be a little bit different, and that's why there's that little bit of a hesitancy there. But we're looking at how long is of a time frame then for this process.
So our first phase, we're supposed to have submitted reimbursable expenditures as of August the 31st, or September 1st is the deadline there. So that doesn't leave us very many days.
Yeah, yeah. So I would say.
I'd also like to add, we are not posting or publishing any deadline for individuals to actually submit the application. It is our intent to release funds until all of the funding has been awarded.
Okay, thank you. And that's wonderful. And we'll keep that information out there as we get closer to, excuse me, that goal of releasing the 2.5. But I think what we're all wanting to let everybody that's watching us know, or that might be watching this tonight or tomorrow, is don't wait for a deadline. Start getting your paperwork in order. Start finding your financial statements, those expenses that you've incurred over the past 6 months, and what you anticipate through the end of the year. If you're going to put something together to the PPE and your payroll and that. Start gathering it now, because once that application is live, you're going to want to get in. You all are going to be working as fast as you can to get the review process done, get it to the committee, get the committee's recommendations to your board, and then the board approval. Then I'll go back to David, who will sign off on it and get it paid. So we are talking, there's some, what do you think about it? A week or two, depending on when it comes in. It's going to be a couple weeks depending on when the board meets, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And our next board meeting is, I think the first meeting in September is September the 1st.
Okay. So I would, this is my recommendation. I'm not putting you all on the spot, but if you are looking at applying for this grant, bring up that county website, keep hitting F5 until you get it refreshed and that application appears, and get working on it, because it's going to go through the staff again. It's going to go through that committee. And then up to the board. And if the board meets, the next meeting is that first Tuesday in September. We've got to get working on that so that they've got plenty of time to get that process through. And then the next one would be 2 weeks after that, I assume. If they don't make it for the first meeting in September, they would have to wait till the second for approval. Does that sound about right? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Joe.
Okay.
And you are correct. Applications will be reviewed on a first come, first served basis.
Okay. First come, first serve. As soon as they can get that to the Board of Commissioners for approval, then it'll get distributed in that until all the funds run out. And couple questions here. It's $2.5 million that you have dedicated to small business, and I believe you said about the same amount for not-for-profits. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And that is until it runs out. So hurry up and get those applications in. How many days are left to apply and allocate? Again, as soon as that application is up by the end of the day today, you'll be able to fill that out and get that application in. The amount of time left for that is as soon as that money runs out. So I don't want to, none of us are giving you a date. We don't want to be put on the hook that we say, the end of this month and it's gone before that or after. Again, website to access the application, I assume it's going to be on the home page of the website. There's not a dive in there that they'll find a button or something on the, okay, wonderful, thank you. So just be sure and check out that website. Yes, ma'am.
There is already a link on our website in regards to COVID-19 information and resources. Individuals will be able to find the applications under that link, but we'll also have a ribbon there with news and current events, things of that nature, and it will be there as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, here's a good question. Is this a loan that needs to be repaid or is it a grant?
So these are not loans that need to be repaid. These are grants. That's the most excellent question. And so there's no eligibility criteria to meet for a loan, but there certainly are eligibility criteria to meet to receive the grant.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Anticipated date for distribution of funds. Again, that first Tuesday in September would be the first chance that the Board of Commissioners gets to approve it. And so after that, it would be the distribution. So you need to get that in definitely well before that first Tuesday in September. Here's a good question, and I've gotten a couple emails already to this. For those that may have already previously submitted for this grant, do they need to reapply, or are they able to go with that existing submission?
Shannon, you want to take that one?
Thanks for that question, Joe. So where we stand on those who may have previously submitted an application through the chamber site, we will honor those applications. If additional information is needed, we will contact that agency requesting that information.
Thank you. Thank you. I do appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you do your screen share again, please, and go back to some of the application requirements, and we can put that up on the screen. There's a couple questions to that. I think maybe if we're able to share that, that might answer it. And then if there, as we share that screen up there, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put those into the Q&A or onto the Facebook piece. So yes, the eligibility, 20 or fewer employees, including your CEO, your owner. This specific first 30% is for for-profit private businesses in Henry County, and you do need to prove that you are in Henry County with your business occupational tax license for either the county or one of the 4 municipalities. Excuse me, any other highlights there? I think that, you know, and up to, I think there was a question, up to $10,000 is the additional grant amount. Yeah, okay. Any other questions anybody has?
Shannon, do you think we should talk about the duplication at this point because of the cities?
I think we should.
So Joe, there's another point I want to mention. So our cities, right, McDonough, Locust Grove, Hampton, as well as Stockbridge, they also receive some of this funding. And if you receive funding from any of these cities, then you're not eligible to receive funding from Henry County.
Another point to add to that, Joe, later on, we will be releasing funding through the Community Development Block Grant Program to assist with the stabilization of small businesses. This program is specifically for micro enterprises, which defined by HUD is 5 or fewer employees to include the operator owner.
Okay.
The funding for individual applicants for that program was approved by the board at $5,000. Those applications are not yet available, but there still comes into play the duplication of benefit. So businesses who have received PPP or are looking to apply through Henry County's Restart program and receive funding there, or receive funding from one of the cities, would not be eligible for the CDBG program.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I did want to mention that each of the 4 cities had some monies that same pool, same treasury pool and that are available. And I know that they're working on getting that announced and out. And I've had conversations with a few of them, and we'll be working with them also to promote the opportunity for our Henry County businesses. Let's see, one more pass through these questions and answers. Let's see. Okay, so again, repeat the website. It's simply the county's website, and it's that whole co.henry.ga.gov, I believe. Wow.
Correct.
Pulled that one out of my pocket. Yeah, if you go to the county's website, you can, by the end of the day today, it should be up and live. There will be, I assume there's a button at the top, something that'll let you know that it's open. And then you can click on that and take care of the application process. But again, while you are waiting for that to go live, you've got a good couple of hours waiting. Make sure that you're looking at your financial statements and maybe some of the expenses that you might have incurred since March 1st regarding protective equipment and things like that in response to the pandemic, so that you can begin the application process, because it will take a little bit of information that you're going to need to put that together. Again, I thank you both for the time. It doesn't look like we've seen any questions in the last couple of minutes. So we must be that good that we got it all explained to them. Thank you both for your time. Thank you both for your work. I cannot tell you how much on behalf of Henry County businesses and the not-for-profits that we appreciate the work that you're doing to help keep the community going. And as always, it's a pleasure working with the both of you, and I look forward to more opportunities that we can do that. So, oh, let me see. I got somebody that raised a hand. Let's see. Trying to cut me off before I. If you've got a question, hurry up and get those in, please. Then there we go. Let's see. Regarding nonprofits assisting residents, does this apply for housing authorities infrastructure as well? I'm not sure exactly where that's going, but you might have a better idea with the HUD.
So we actually have not considered the housing authorities, but in my work with the Community Development Block Grant Program, I would say no, that would not be considered. What our goal is for this program, assisting nonprofits, would be more in line with public service activities to assist with rent payments, mortgage, utilities. We're looking for nonprofits who will work with residents, receive their information using Georgia Power just as an example, receive those past due statements and make payment to Georgia Power. They will not be releasing funds directly to residents, but will be making bill payments on their behalf.
And along with that, Joe, I mean, we're also seeking to help those nonprofits that are retraining the workforce.
Correct.
And so these funds can also be used for workforce development, because we know that certain jobs have been impacted because of this COVID crisis. And so now people have to be retrained. And so you can use these funds to provide for a caseworker to track the caseload, as well as to provide for workforce retraining.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. A couple of good questions here. As I went to tell everybody that we didn't have any more questions, now they're coming through. Would technology upgrades so that work could be done remotely during the pandemic, would that be included?
Oh, most definitely. I'll take that one from Shannon. Most definitely, the technology upgrades in order for people to be able to telework because of this COVID crisis are eligible expenditures.
Okay, wonderful. That's great. How long does a business or a nonprofit need to be in business to be eligible for this?
We did not put guidelines on any time frame for how long a business has to be in business. They do have to have been impacted by COVID-19. And again, these funds are not to start a business.
Yeah.
So they have to have been an existing business impacted by COVID-19.
And they have to have a financial statement. So it's not something that I could decide that I was going to respond to the pandemic and start a business. So I've got to, okay. Any
That is
specific
correct.
time frame? Is it a 20, what are we in 20? I think we're in 2020. So like a 2019 financial statement, or is there a 12-month statement? Is that what you're looking for as that looks?
That's what we're looking for.
Okay. And
to verify whether or not someone's received the influx of funds from the payroll protection program, the PPP, we're looking for at least 5 months of bank statements, because that was received recently. So that would be for this year in 2020.
Okay. And I assume that if there's a question that comes up as the review process goes, you'll ask for more clarification. So if it looks like it's a little out of whack, or maybe it's not clear enough in the detail of the financial statements or wherever, they would be contacted to provide a little more information to see if, okay, good. I know that there's a few that have that question, that concern. Yes, predominantly those not-for-profits that are working around reemployment, training, food pantries, even with some of our small healthcare not-for-profits that need PPE and
Yes.
things like that they need to get in to see their clients, that would be eligible as a not-for-profit expense. Wonderful. Okay, so yeah,
Yes, sir.
I think the key is that what you're looking for is businesses that have been impacted, not-for-profits that have been impacted by COVID, that might have had expenses from March 1st through the end of this year to respond to that. So that could be those plexiglass safety pieces that they had to put up between the customer and the employee, or between a worker and a worker, the masks, any of the protective devices in that. But there is, fortunately, it's a pretty wide open, but not overly wide, but there's a lot of different opportunities that they can look at on how they're impacted. But the key is to check the county's website this afternoon, look for the application, start gathering your information. The sooner you get it in, the sooner it gets reviewed and you're approved. And if you have any questions, if they have any questions, is there somebody at the county that is available? I don't want the calls. I'm going to let you all have the calls.
So they can contact our grants department, and Kimberly Monass is in the grants department, or they can contact me directly, and my extension is 6529.
Thank
But
you.
on the website itself, there will be a phone number as well as an email address that's available for them to reach out to.
Okay. Wonderful. One last question, because I know I promised you that we were done. I want to clarify again that franchises are not eligible, and so franchise fees would not be eligible. What about car lease expenses for that independent contractor? Car lease expenses or things like that, would that be covered? Not necessarily.
Say that again, Joe.
Vehicle leases that they might have for their business, I'm assuming as an independent contractor or anything.
So the answer to that would be no at this time, but I certainly will look into that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So
Could he or she further clarify what they mean by vehicle leases in terms of being able to respond to COVID-19?
yeah, let me see if I can get more information from this individual, and I will follow up with you all and see, because I don't know if it's that, I don't know. I don't want to open a can of worms. So let me see what I can figure out with this individual, and we'll get with you. And again, I cannot thank you both enough for the opportunity to work with you and the rest of the great staff of the county. Again, it's as we work together, this is how we get through this. This is how we make this county stronger. And so it is a pleasure to work with you. Do you mind if we take the PowerPoint that you provided and we post that out there with this webinar later, so that if they have questions, they can look at some of that clarification and that, is that okay? Perfect.
Certainly.
All right. Thank you both very, very much. Before I let everybody go, again, not-for-profits, you'll be eligible as well. It's just a different application that you will have. A week from today, we've got two exciting things. We've got community dialogue on use your difference to make a difference as part of our social injustice conversations. I'm excited to announce that Chair June Wood is one of our panelists on that call. So if you want to join us, you can register online for that. That afternoon at 4 o'clock, we're going to do another virtual after hours with Name That Tune. And of course, I think we're around 67% for the census response for this county. It needs to be higher. So please, if you haven't taken the census, take the census. If you are out and about and you have interaction with your family, your friends, your neighbors, please ask them if they've taken their census. And make sure that we get those numbers up. And always wear your mask. Yes, thank you. Thank you for the census. That is just, it's so important, because and David, this is a whole nother webinar I'm going to have you on too. This census drives more than just the redistricting that we have at the state government and at the federal government. But this, one of the first things that I got when I came here was If I fixed transportation, I would be successful. This is a huge piece to that because this determines where federal and state monies for transportation, education, healthcare, government, all of this is per person. And so if we are undercounted, we're not getting that money. Am I correct?
Right.
Thank you,
You
sir.
are correct. And these CARES funds are an example of that.
A prime example of that.
Yep. So thank you. So that was a full circle wrap up. Again, I appreciate you two so much. It's always a pleasure seeing you and working with you. And I hope to see you back online for some more announcements in the near future. If there's already questions, please reach out to the county. Feel free to reach out to us. If we don't have an answer for you, we will make sure that we get that answer and get that back to you. Have a great afternoon. Thank you to you both and your team for doing the great things that you guys are doing in the county. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks.